Hi there, this is Dr. Paul Mills from England bringing you another incredible chess game. In this game we're going to play the black pieces and we show a remarkable way to break through on the queen side in this game. So white plays d4, we play nf6, white plays nf3 and we fianchetto our bishop to g6, white plays c4 and the bishop goes to g7, knight goes to c3 and we castle. Notice that we are heroically castling in this game. We're going to try and castle as quickly as possible. White replies by building a strong centre with e4 and we go d6 and the bishop goes to d3. Our knight goes to d7 and we have adopted a familiar formation. The bishop goes to e3 and our pawn goes to c5. The white queen goes to c2 and we capture the pawn on d4, which is a central pawn, and the bishop takes d4. We now move to b6 and white decides to castle queen side. We'll move our knight to c5 and the bishop takes. This may not be a wise idea because it allows us to have an open file, a half open file, the b file, with which to attack the queen side. The knight jumps into d5 and we can see no reason why we should not swap off that knight and allow our bishop some more scope on the long diagonal from a1 to h8. The pawn takes and the queen straight away moves to a5, attacking the pawn on a2. King moves over and the rook moves to the half open file, and we are already threatening to play rook takes b2 check and forking the king and the queen. And so the pawn has to advance to b3. And now we show a remarkable series of moves to maneuver on the queen side. First of all, we'll attack the knight, which is now pinned against the rook. This is attacked by the pawn on h3, and we'll take the knight. And the pawn takes. This disrupts white's pawn structure on the king side, so those pawns cannot really do much trouble. And white's counterplay on the king side has really not materialized at all. And now there we are. We move our rook to b4. It's on the black square, so we're going to play on the black squares. And so white's bishop is playing no part in the game. His bishop is locked behind the pawn chain from a2 to d5. King moves. We'll give it a check to stop it escaping, and king moves back, and we move our second rook onto the b file. King moves forward, we'll check it. King moves back, we'll check it again. King moves to b2, and we'll quickly move our rook onto the a file. Notice of course that the pawn on b3 can't take the rook because it is pinned against the king. The king moves back. We'll move our rook forward. The rook moves to g1. And we'll move our queen forward. Again, it can't be taken because the pawn on b3 is pinned. And now we have three pieces attacking the pawn on b3. The queen moves to b2. But to no avail because we break through with rook takes b3. Pawn takes b3 and rook takes b3 again, pinning the queen against the king. The bishop attacks the rook and we take white's queen and the king takes the rook. And now we have a queen against two rooks, but we have, of course we have two pawns. So it's a queen and two pawns versus two rooks. But of course this is not the situation. White is really in a lot of trouble here. We'll check him, and so there's only one move. The king goes back. We'll check him again. The king moves now into the center, and we'll take a pawn on f3. Now, the rest of the game is quite instructive. The rook moves to protect the pawn. We'll check the king, and it can only go to one square, which is e1, and we move our queen to c3, checking the king, which moves, and we capture the bishop on c2. This is the policy in this position, is that we continue to win material. That is, the queen and the bishop are going to continue to take the pawns, and the white pawns. King moves, we'll take another pawn. King moves, we'll check the king, pawn moves, check again, we check the king, the bishop moves on the diagonal, rook moves, and we check the king again, king moves, we move the queen up, king moves, and we take another pawn. You see how we've taken all the pawns which are not protected. And this now gives us a tremendous position. We, after the move rook to f1, protecting the pawn on f3, we now have 1, 2, 3 passed pawns. 3 passed pawns. The rest of the game concluded quite quickly because this was we were both short on time, and white lost on time in this game. So I was fortunate enough to win this game. The correct way to play from here is now for black to create a little fortress, believe it or not. So the queen will duck behind the bishop onto f5, and from there the queen and the bishop will then guide the passed pawns to the 7th rank. And when they get to the 7th rank, then the queen can possibly sacrifice itself for one of the rooks, and so the pawn on the 7th has only a single rook to contend with. So that is the strategy in this kind of position. It's quite an interesting position. The plan is to simply push the passed pawns forward as far as possible, as long as they are defended, of course, and then to sacrifice the queen for a rook and to queen one of the passed pawns, which has to be stopped, of course, by the second rook, which is then taken by the bishop. And so that is how to win the actual position, the game from this kind of position. So there we are. I hope you enjoyed that incredible chess game. Thank you for listening and watching, and we look forward to you joining us for the next game.